as a writer and you're developing a character, it can be really easy to get caught up in that really cool concept, and you're like concept, 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 but you want to have somebody that you root for or you can identify with to go through the story.
Hey guys, welcome to Inside Comics. Today my guests are Matthew Kund and Noah Ray. Thanks for being on the show, guys.
Thanks
Thanks
for
for
having us on.
Yeah.
Really quick, if you guys like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe and tell a friend about it. Now, guys, you have a new book out called Dino Thrashers, and it features like anamorphic, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it has dinosaurs in the shape of people, which is awesome. Jurassic Park is my favorite movie of all time. I also love King Kong and Godzilla and all of those kind of big monster guys. So I'm super psyched to have you on the show. And before we kind of dive into what your book is about, I'd like to talk about creating compelling characters. So what do you do when you're first starting to plan your book? How do you define who the characters are and what their personalities are?
So I have a practice daily where I do a couple of things just to sort of get started. I'll do like a pitch for an existing character, just to sort of get my sort of creative juices flowing. And I also have the dream that one day if I'm ever in an elevator with Jim Lee, he's like, Nightwing, and I can be like, oh, here's my folder with my 6 Nightwing pitches, but I don't know if that'll ever happen. But another thing I do is I do a brainstorm where I do 2 characters, 2 environments, and 2 sort of like plot developments. So like, I might like, all right, so for today, I came up with the idea of like a ghost hunter on a reality show that had lost his wife, and they were both previously like ghost hunters, but now that she's passed away, she leaves him a note that says, hey, keep the show going and I'll be sort of the ghost on the other side that's like opening and closing doors to make our show bigger. So I just sort of thought about that, and I was like, all right, so this guy's going to be really happy because his show is going to take off and he's going to get wild ratings and stuff like that, but he's also really sad because he can't sort of celebrate it, with his wife there, like physically and, emotionally to sort of, hug and hold, but she's still sort of kind of there with him. So that was sort of the character I came up with today. So it was like, he's successful. He's doing the thing that he wanted to do with his wife, but she's not completely there. So he's gaining success, but he's also, suffering like loss, but that loss is really strange because he knows that like she's not really like completely gone. There's this like form of her sort of still around him. So like that's sort of the way it's usually the kernel of an idea and then sort of building it out from there. There's like this David Lynch discussion where he's like Blue Velvet, he just thought of an ear in a field, and then everything's just sort of built off of that, and it was the story kind of built off of that. So that's really like one of the ways I work is like just get a kernel of an idea and then build from that. So I hope that was a good example of my sort of creative process.
Yeah, well, one thing I like to do is I like to kind of like combine people. So like, what if my friend Luke had a baby with Hulk Hogan? What would that baby be like? And that kind of forms like the personality. And so it's like someone who's like super religious and conservative with someone who's like very like out there and kind of wild and and enthusiastic, and you kind of combine the 2 characters together. Just that those are some things that I like to do when I'm creating characters.
Yeah, and I also like to maybe put characters that might have one viewpoint in a situation that's really gonna like challenge it. Like I always like wanted to like if I ever got to write a Daredevil book, I'd always want to be like, how does Daredevil still have his deep, you know, Catholic beliefs when Thor, who's a Norse god, is just flying around like shooting hammers. Like, how do you still hold on to that, that belief system? Because that would be really challenged. It's not this monotheistic, structure that you have that's obviously being disproved by, this guy flying around with the Avengers. So I like to sort of like put somebody that would have this like belief system or these thoughts in an environment that would really challenge them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also like when you're plotting out your book, you create characters that kind of contradict or challenge each other, and so when you put them together, they have something to talk about. Which, yeah,
Sure. Yeah, the sidekick that doesn't completely go along with the thoughts. If you think of like X-Files, there's Mulder, who's always like, this is a werewolf, and Scully's like, come on, it's clearly like a large dog running around. He's like, no, it's a werewolf. Like, so to just sort of have that foil to just sort of have that discussion. Yeah, it's good to have like competing viewpoints as well.
I'm wondering if you guys have any kind of tips for when you're first laying out who your characters are and what their character arcs are. What do you do to develop your characters?
For me as like an artist, it really comes down to obviously what serves the story best and also what I want to draw. So it was really great working with the writer Mike McCarthy on this book because he basically wanted to create the all-time, like, basically the all-time love letter to 80s and 90s comics slash, Saturday morning cartoons. So a big philosophy with the designs were make them cool to look at and also make them fun to look at, and at the same time make that translate also over to me as well. So if I'm having fun drawing it, if I think it's cool looking, hopefully that means the readers think the same thing. So that was the philosophy going into it. There were other things that went into like long form storytelling as the characters sort of progressed throughout the issue. So we added on some like armor features that will evolve as the series goes. But what's nice about this book is that it's just sort of fun. So you don't really have to worry too much about practicality or anything like that. It's basically, Mike gave me a basic description of the spirit of the characters and then was like, go for it, draw something cool. And I loved that. And it was just sort of a dream as someone who grew up playing with action figures to just sort of have that action figure mentality. But I've worked on other books before as well where it's like a little more functional, and Matt can get into that a little bit. So we've done like a lot of sci-fi books before where it's sort of a little more grounded to the story. But yeah, Matt can sort of talk about that as far as character design goes.
Yeah, so I work a lot as a writer, and Noah said it's a lot of sci-fi stuff. So I think about like the first book I did. It's a book called Digital Forever, where when people pass away, they can go into a simulated afterlife that they've sort of designed through a simulation, which is like high concept. But I wanted to make the character somebody that we sort of rooted for, and he had recently sort of lost all of his family members to an accident. So it was sort of, there was tragedy to his backstory, and I wanted people to care about him, not just be so much focused on, oh, he's in this cool sort of simulation right now. I wanted them to know like what he had before and what he had lost before and what he was kind of getting in the simulation, and we as the readers knew that it wasn't real, but it kind of felt real to him. So it's sort of like I wanted to make sure that we cared about this guy and we knew what he was after before he went into this really cool situation. So I think like as a writer and you're developing a character, it can be really easy to get caught up in that really cool concept, and you're like concept, but you want to have somebody that you root for or you can identify with to go through the story. So I think that's pretty important for a writer in sort of character development.
Yeah, I think there's nothing like putting your character through, trials and tribulations to make the reader relate to them, right? Because we've all
Mhm.
had hard times, as Dusty Rhodes would say. But you've all had hard times, and so when someone's going through that, you really relate to them. Um, I when I'm designing my characters, I'll often think about like the overall theme of the story, and so if someone is kind of going from being like a very analytical person to maybe having faith and kind of taking the leap. So I'll design that into their character arc, and then try and have them speak and communicate in a way that is reflective of someone who's very analytical and very dissecting each situation. And then I think it's important to kind of put that into other aspects of their life too, right? Where maybe their job relates that function, or there's different things, right? Like even with like going into like the Ninja Turtles, which
Yeah.
um the brooding and stuff of Raphael is kind of reflective in his size, which are like really like serious weapons. They're not like
Mhm.
fun-loving kind of nunchucks, where you're
Yeah.
spinning the pepperoni on your finger or something like that. It's so I think you can relate the character to their personality, to their what they're doing as far as like an occupation or what their weapons are, and really kind of expand from there, and have kind of all aspects, the way they dress obviously, reflected in who that person is.
Yeah, you got to have like function to the character's design, which I really love doing with Dino Thrashers. So we had like the lead Dino Thrasher, his name is Tor, and he's a velociraptor. And I always wanted to do this sort of Indiana Jones type leader of character, and I designed sort of this Indiana Jones analog, but he just ended up looking really bland. But he sort of captured that like adventurer spirit that I wanted. And then Dino Thrashers came along, and Tor's description sort of fit that Indiana Jones like leader, almost like Indiana Jones meets like a team leader, basically. It's like this adventurer leader. So I merged the two into this Velociraptor character, and he was the one that like immediately stuck. But there were other characters like Snapper, who is the like the is basically a prehistoric turtle, anthropomorphic turtle, basically, and he's the tech whiz. So when I first drew him, he had so much going on. Like he had like a satellite dish on his back. He had like antennas coming out of everywhere, that kind of stuff, computers on his both arms, that thing. And I sent it over to Mike, the writer, and he was like, he just like was like, he like basically described it as like getting hit in the face with design, basically, So I had to look at the script, I had to look at the story and pare down the character that way. So I wasn't just, it wasn't so 90s that it hurt, right? Where you have all the pouches and extra things that eventually just never come into play in the story. It's also easier for me because, it's less to draw in a book that's sort of full of characters. It's a lot easier just to pare them down to a nice silhouette, and not have them be too busy.
Yeah, I love when you can tell who the characters are just from a silhouette. I think that's super important. And it adds just personality too. It's like, okay, I know who that one is. And like Wolverine with his iconic hair. So
Exactly.
yeah. Um,
Yeah.
and I think so much of design can tell you who a character is just by looking at them without ever reading a word, right? Like, if someone they look a little disheveled and they have their shirt untucked, and they're kind of slouching, well, maybe that person's a bit of a slacker or something like that. Like there's or someone's really prim and proper and standing up tight, and they're wearing a three-piece suit and they look a little uptight, and so that might so I think all these things work together to tell a compelling story and create these interesting characters. um
Yeah.
Getting into Dino Thrashers, it's on Kickstarter now.
Mhm.
This is issue 2. Are you able to get issue 1 in the
Yes. So it's the way we have it set up. If you were a backer of one, it's very easily just keep continuing, jump on, get the stuff for two. But if you missed one, you can do one and two in all kinds of various forms and fashions. You can do digital, you can do print catch ups.
This series is basically, again, designed to be like Saturday morning cartoons where you're familiar with the archetypes. It's just a fun ride, but you get two fun rides if you bet both issues. So it's like, it's twice the fun if you back both. But it is something where like the book is designed so that if you jump on at issue 2, you're not going to be left in the dust or anything like that. It's a very fun, easy book to get into.
Can you give me the elevator pitch for Dino Thrashers?
Yeah, I can do that. So it's what it is speaking of Jurassic Park, your favorite movie. It centers around a group of four human paleontologists who are out in the desert excavating dinosaur bones. And in the midst of excavating, they find this device, and it looks like a dinosaur egg, but when they take it back to the lab, they realize that it is like alien in origin. And they accidentally activate the device, which sends out this like homing beacon to these interstellar beings who open up a portal and come into our world. And they're the anthropomorphic dinosaurs known as the Dino Thrashers. And they're warriors, and they're good warriors. But there are bad versions of these dumb anthropomorphic dinosaurs that have already been here on Earth and are manipulating this businessman for their evil deeds. So the Dino Thrashers, with the help of this group of paleontologists, decide to go and fight these evil dinosaurs called the pterosaurs. And issue 1 was about setting all that up. Issue 2 is all about the battle between the Dino Thrashers and the pterosaurs.
How big do you have this thing plotted out for here?
So the plan is 12 issues, but like Noah said, it's very Saturday night or Saturday morning cartoons, come in almost like monster of the week, but maybe we have like fight of the week, and then it's sort of like moving the story along. But the plan is for 12 issues.
That's awesome. I love big stories. I really gravitate towards that, like, kind of the bigger the better, which is hard to do as like a on an indie scale, right? But awesome. That's great. That's great that you're going for it. And so you said you have 3 covers available?
Yes, 3 covers for the first issue. We had we had a cover by Wilson Gandolfo, who has recently done a lot of the art on Behemoth Comics' Paranormal Hitman. We had a cover by Travis Wells, who is going to be involved with another project. And then we actually had a 3rd cover that's done by Leonard Wu, who's an actor. He's been in like the Bosch TV show on Amazon Prime, and I believe he was in Alita Battle Angel. So he did one of those. Those are the 3 for the first cover. Second issue, we have a issue by Ian Ashcroft, who is an English artist that Noah and I have been big fans of for quite some time. And then our colorist Alfred, he did a really jaw-dropping cover for 2, and he's doing incredible work on the interiors. And the 3rd issue is being drawn right now. It's gonna we'll probably announce it sort of mid-campaign, but it's going to be very retro in style. We did an homage to G.I. Joe 53, a Snake Eyes cover where we put Tor in. There are sketch covers that Noah is doing for 2. So while it won't be, one of the main sort of covers that will produce in higher quantities, there'll be a lower number of sketch covers. And if you want a Dino Thrasher put on that, we can do that. Or if you want Daredevil put on it, we can do that as well. So there is going to be the ability to get a cover by Noah, and it will be more sort of exclusive and one of a kind. There's also a original art tier where if you're an art collector and you want to get a page, because Noah draws pen and ink on a Bristol board, you can get an art page. So that while there's not a cover by Noah, there's plenty of more opportunities to get art from Noah.
Yeah, there's plenty of me to go around on this campaign.
I love variant covers. These actually behind me are like from a book of mine, and it's
I was gonna ask. They're awesome.
Yeah, Scott McDaniel did those from like Batman and Nightwing.
Wow.
And so he did some variants. So I was like super psyched to get that. I've been after Andrew Wildman, who worked on G.I. Joe in the 90s. I've been trying to get him to do a cover for me because like I love that, like 90s pop culture stuff, G.I. Joe, Ninja Turtles. I was such a Ninja Turtles geek. I had TMNT shaved into the side of my head. Yeah. And like I said, I love Jurassic Park. I love all this stuff. I'm totally digging what you guys are putting out there. And I encourage everybody to go out and check out Dino Thrashers on Kickstarter now. Go and pick up like these issues 1 and issue 2. So Matthew Kund, Noah Ray, thank you for being on Inside Comics, guys.
Thanks,
Thank you.
George.